Hey guys, just before we get into this episode of Grassroots Racer, I'd like to thank another one of my partners, CrossFit by Design. I personally use their resources so I can get back into shape. The whole team there are really nice people, so go in there and you can get fit. You can even become fitter. They've got like so many tools in there for people to use. They're based at 24 Taylor Street, Epsom. Go in, say hi to Meg, and tell them that Ayrton sent you. Thanks, guys, and enjoy this episode of Grassroots Racer. Hey guys, on today's episode of Grassroots Racer, I speak to someone who has been drag racing a long time. He's done a lot in his career, and we're about to hear his story. So, welcome, Paul, and how are you tonight?
I'm very good, thank you, and thanks for inviting me along tonight.
It's great having you on the podcast tonight. But let's start. So, what age did you start drag racing, and how did you get into it?
Okay, well, I started racing when I was 18 years old. I actually went to Calder in the early 90s, and it was a normal race meeting, and over the PA someone said, you two could bring your car and a helmet on Friday night and you two could do this. And I thought that sounded interesting. So the next Friday night there was a off-street meet. So I took my car and took my helmet, and I ran my car, ran some 18s and 19-second quarters, and I was instantly hooked.
What car were you driving, Paul?
So back then I had a XA Falcon, Falcon Coupe it was. It was a 302 Cleveland V8 4-speed on dual fuel. It was my only car. And on petrol, it went 19 seconds over the quarter, and on LP gas, it went 18 seconds over the quarter.
That's incredible. That car would have dragged well. But was there a certain category that it would have gone under, or was it just who was ever the quickest one?
At the time, it was an off-street meet, so it's basically just run what you brung. You're not racing anybody. It's just like a practice session. So I did that for a few years and really loved it. Absolutely loved it. And slowly the car got faster and faster. And then I started entering proper race meetings. So Calder used to run a proper race calendar, and I actually entered it in Super Street. So it was still my daily driving car. It was my only car. I used to drive it from home to Calder, which in the old days was through all the city traffic. Then I would switch it to petrol and put different wheels and tyres on the back, drop the exhaust, race the car, and then basically put it all back together, put normal road tyres back on it, and switch it over to LPG and drive it home.
So, did you get much kilometres on that car, considering that you drove it everywhere and then dragged it?
Yes. Well, the car was my only car, and I was an apprentice fitter and turner back then. So I had to drive it to work every day. I had to drive it to do anything. It was my, I don't know how many kilometres it did. We never used to check that back then, but it was my only car, and yeah, whatever it had to do, it had to do. It wasn't, I had no other car, no other options. Once you have a driver's license and a car, the bus is not very interesting anymore. So you don't take the bus or the train or anything like that. You drive everywhere.
Yeah, was the car highly modified at all?
So in the end, the car ended up running 12.6 in the end, which in the early 90s was actually quite fast for a street type car. It was, by the end of it, it was a 351 Cleveland. It was still 2V, ran a 750 Holly, bigger intake manifold, extractors. It was still a manual. It was still a top loader. By the end, it had a 9-inch in it. It used to have a Borg Warner with 411 gears, and we had small tyres to race, like a 26 by 10, and we had a 31 by 10 street tyre, which basically gave us our diff ratio back so it could cruise at 100 k's and not get hot.
Yeah, so by the sounds of it, it was modified quite a bit. When did you transition from that car to another car, or is that the car that you race now?
No, so in I reckon around about 95, 96, I realised that weight was a big issue, and a car like that was always going to be heavy. So I ended up buying a Capri back then, and putting my motor that was out of that car straight into the Capri, just with a little 7-inch wide rear wheel and some leaf springs and just a street car type thing, but cut everything out of it. So if it wasn't needed, it was gone. So it was never going to be a road car. We put a roll cage in it and so forth. And that car, so the coupe went 12.6 as it was, that same motor, but with an automatic gearbox with a C4, C10 type thing. That went 11.3 straight away, just in the weight difference. And that was a pure drag car, so it was only just to be that.
Yeah, so you've always, by the sense of it, you've always been in something quick, no matter what it was. Was that your favourite car?
Not yes and no. The coupe was a great car. It was a great part of my life. I was an apprentice fitter and turner back then, so money wasn't a big thing. So everything on the car was done myself on a budget and research, not just throwing money at it. The Capri was good. The Capri, we ended up half chassing the Capri with a 2V motor still. That went 10.5 in the end. Then I built a alloy headed engine and full chassis the car. That went 9.7, 140, which in the late 90s wasn't too bad. It was a different time back then, Yeah. So look, we really enjoyed it. Racing sort of stopped. The racing sort of stopped. It got a little bit expensive. I wasn't that financial. I was, sort of newly married and settling down and sorting out the house and life and things like that. I never really had a great paying job, so the car was always sort of second. And when racing got sort of super expensive, I ended up having to give it up. Plus the local track was going through changes and sort of closing down as well. I never really had the funds or the finance to travel interstate because the travel interstate back then was the traveling, it was your crew, it was time off work, all those sorts of things. So there was lots of things that went in between. So that all made a big change to it, basically. It probably went on hold for 5 years, 6 years maybe. And then I decided to start rebuilding it and to build it into a supercharged Outlaws car. So I started to develop a big cubic inch Windsor, so I stayed with a Ford, a big Windsor, supercharger, an injector hat, all those sorts of things, and keep the same car because the car could hold a big tyre. It was a 32 by 14 type tyre car, so it was sort of okay for it. Because I love the sound of the blowers, I love the noise of the blowers, and it seemed to be a nice thing. But at the same time, I was making a business out of tuning people's cars with computers and ECUs and things like that. A friend had a car come up for sale. It was a white Mustang, and he'd bought it for his daughter to drive, and I don't know exactly, maybe the interest was lost and it came up at a reasonable price. However, it was right at the same time I'd lost my job. So it was one of those, that would be great to have, but wasn't possible. Yeah. Then my brother said to me, look, it's really more what you do. So I thought if I could sell everything I had that was building up for the Capri, then maybe I could buy this car. So I put everything up for sale, super cheap, and it all sold within 2 weeks. And I went and bought Haley's Comet, which was the white Mustang.
Yeah, so by the sounds of it, you're obviously a Ford man. So was my dad. and I bet he'll listen to this interview and he'll be shocked about what you drove. But Fords are quick. Everyone knows that. So is another part of being quick would have to be reaction time. So what's your secret to getting good off the line?
Secret to reaction time is to understand how your car will work and how your body works. So if you sort of realize that your reaction time is, let's say it's a little bit slow, or the car tends to be a little bit slow, instead of leaving on the last yellow, you can leave on the middle yellow. So we never really got into the whole delay box side of things, but we did sort of start going on the middle yellow, or the end of the middle yellow, things like that, as opposed to wait to the last one. Another trick was to stage a little bit deeper. That would then reduce your reaction time, but if you were really, really good, then you'd have the problem of you would red light. So we had a little bit of tricks either way to work out how it was going to work.
But, I know myself that you had a scary accident, but would you like to tell the viewers about it?
Yes. So after I ran Halley's Comet for a few years, I was sort of under the belief that the Halley's Comet was just a sedan with a roll cage. Wasn't very safe to be going as fast as it should be, or as fast as it was. It was going 190 miles per hour. So I ended up, I suppose I bought a roller car from America, which was a full chassis, big dollar car. I brought it over, put all my gear into that, and converted it all over. And it looked amazing. I really, really loved that car. It looked awesome. And when we started running it, the car was sort of veering a little bit to the left, and we did a couple of race meetings and we were trying to get a handle on it, and we thought we had it sorted. And basically on the second big meeting of the car, first run in the morning, we put a low power, low boost tune into the car. The car took off, was fine. It got to about half track, started veering a little bit to the left, and I could see I was going to hit the cone. I thought, that's okay, I can hit the cone, it's not going to damage the car. But I got off the throttle. As I got off the throttle, the car veered hard right, super hard right. And the car went diagonally over the finish line, so that the speed that it read, the 172 miles an hour that it read, was actually faster than that. And it went straight into the wall. The roof blew off the car, the bonnet blew off the car. The car then flipped onto its roof and slid down the track for another 200 metres, spinning on its roof like a top. Now, when I look back at the footage, you can actually see I did hit the brakes before I hit the wall. But of course, because the back of the car was steering, there was nothing I could do. Later on, we actually worked out that the track locator tab broke on the diff. So as the load was there, it was pushing the car a little bit to the left. When I backed off, it broke off completely, and then the diff just floated around on its own and drove me into the wall. There was nothing we could do. So it was a very, very big incident. I did get out of the car on my own. I had very good safety gear. We run a hands device, and my crew, they're very, very strict on me to make sure I'm seated in the car well, strapped in tight, because you never know when something bad's going to happen. And this proved it. So I actually did crawl out of the car on my own. From then I was taken off to the medical centre and the hospital and so forth. But I did come out of it fairly good. I mean, no broken bones. I did have a crushed vertebrae. I was in hospital for one night, and I actually flew back to Melbourne the next night. In a lot of pain, I will admit, but I did want to be home back with my family and have somebody look after me than have people in Melbourne stressing about me and wanting to come up.
I saw the crash, and it wasn't too pretty, and it said that you were lucky to escape. So I wanted to talk to you, and you obviously said it wasn't, it hurt, but it wasn't as bad as what people saw it. But everyone knows that drag racing is popular. Like, there's always lots of spectators, and it has some very loyal fans. What would you say to someone who's never been in the drag racing atmosphere and what it feels like to be there?
As a spectator, it is quite an amazing thing. It's very hard to comprehend from an outside person just how fast these cars are and how fast the acceleration is. Like, we think of a car does 0 to 100 k's in 5 seconds, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. When you start comprehending cars going faster than that, we think, okay, a high-end Mercedes or a Tesla or something does 0 to 100 in 2.9 seconds. Well, all of a sudden you start getting things like Halley's Comet, for example, which went 7.3 over the quarter. That was doing 0 to 255 kilometers per hour in 4.7 seconds.
Oh, that's cool.
So all of a sudden, it's very hard to comprehend just how fast they go. Like, we see them, you see them on the hill, you see them at the stands, and it looks pretty cool, that's all fine. You don't realise just how fast they're going or how quickly they're getting to 100 kilometres per hour and things like that. And that's not even talking, cars like Top Fuel and the exorbitant cars,
Yeah,
those cars are doing 250 miles per hour. Or even the fast radial cars, they're doing 200 miles per hour plus now in the 8th mile. So all of a sudden, 0 to over 300 kilometres an hour in less than 4 seconds. It's on the hill, it's hard you don't really see that. But once you actually start getting down there and you see it in real life, it's amazing. And that's the spectator side. So as a racer, the drag racing world, to me, it is a fantastic world. People are there, I'm going to say 98%, 99% of the people there are your friends, will be your friends, and will become your friends. Everybody there is out to have a good time, enjoy themselves, be safe, and pretty much work on their own thing. So it's not a case of, I'm going to beat you, I hate you, that sort of thing. Yes, when the helmet goes on and on the start line, there is rivalry, don't get me wrong, because at the end of the day, you are there to win and you are there to take the trophy if you can. But outside of that, in the pits, when everyone's working on their car, it's nothing for another guy, even the guy you're about to race. Can I borrow a tool? Can I borrow a spanner? Can I borrow a part? Or, can you help me here? Or can you give me some advice? That is very strong in the drag racing scene. And it becomes a little bit of a family. So there might be people where you may not even remember their names all too much, but you'll see each other 2 or 3 times a year. And, it'll be like you just saw them last week. How's it going? What are you up to? How's the kids? And so forth.
Yeah, and drag racing is a very family-based sport. Do you have any other family members who race as well?
My brother, he got into racing. He tried it. He realised that it's a little bit more expensive than he planned to spend. So he sort of got out of it, but now he has a very fast street car, and he's now building a new, super fast street car. So he took a little bit of a break. My nephew, he's getting into it, and we'll be supporting him very well as soon as he gets a little bit older. But nobody ahead of me was a drag racer, so my family above me was never into it. So I'm sort of the first person that got into it, let's say.
Yeah, and you mentioned to me this interview that you've driven a lot of amazing cars. Have you got a dream car that you'd like to, take down the drag strip one day? And what would it be?
My dream, I suppose, is to go a full pro mod car. So the cars that sort of go 5.7, 5.8 over the quarter mile, the big twin turbo pro mod cars, that's my ultimate goal. I don't have the resources to do that, and I accept that. But that's why if said to me, "What's your dream? Where do you want to be?" That's where I want to be. I mean, there's a couple of cars that run now in Australia that are just unbelievably amazing, and yeah, that's my ultimate dream.
Yeah. And is there any other like drag races that you looked up to?
There probably is. I don't know if I can name them. There were some people that were really helpful and really made a big influence, you could say. You know, I looked at people like Victor Bray, for example. The friendliness, the niceness, the way he's so approachable. That made me really respect, I suppose, drag racing, him, of course, and made me want to be a nice guy like him. There are other people that I have looked up to. George Haddad is one I've always looked up to. He helps me on my car now, which is unbelievable, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But he's been a great guy from the very start. Before I even knew him, he knew me before I knew him. If anything, it should have been me know him, then he knows, then I knew. You know, it should have been the other way around. But he knows everything about everyone, and he's so super approachable to everybody. So I suppose I would like to, you know, I always wanted to be like that. I always wanted to be the nice guy. So they're people I have really looked up to, and the people have really made a big influence in the things I want to do and where I want to be.
And do you have any social media channels or sponsors that you'd like to mention?
Look, I don't have any social media side of things. I am looking to do that. We haven't got around to it. Look, sponsors-wise, Haddad Race Cars and Engines, which is George. He has been a great part of the car. He does the engine in the car. And we've proven that the engine is way more powerful than almost it needs to be. We're now trying to control that motor. For something I thought it was going to be reasonable. It turns out it's unbelievably good. We've got more paintworks, Moore and Sons Paintworks, bodyworks that they look after the bodywork on the car. CVE Performance, they do a lot of the work on the car as well, so I'm super grateful for them. And Custom Mustangs, they help out with a lot of parts and a lot of external help, let's say, because at the end of the day, races quite often are won and lost in the garage, not necessarily on the start line. Everybody sees what they see on the start line. They don't see the 2 years of work or all the late nights or all the stuff going on in the garage before you get to the racetrack. And that is a big part of it. So your crew, the help you get from there makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me tonight, Paul. And everyone, that was a great story that we just heard from Paul. He's been drag racing a long time. He's driven so many Fords that just go absolutely nuts. And I really appreciated having him on tonight. And I appreciate everyone who continues to watch this episode. And please enjoy.
Very much for your time.
And don't forget, everyone, drive fast and take chances.